On episode 217 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn how yoga can strengthen your mind and body with Cheri Cope. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This is Mehrban, and I'm happy to have you listening to this one. And today's episode is on yoga and how it can help you both mentally and physically. And I definitely knew about the latter as I have inconsistently practiced yoga, and when I have, I felt much better off the court and as well as immediately after the yoga session. But after talking to Cheri, I realized that yoga can also have a lot of great mental benefits as well. And so we dive deep into yoga here, and we talk about how Cheri discovered yoga, its supreme benefits when you practice it consistently, exercises, the best ones that Cheri suggests for tennis players, how much or really how little of a time commitment you need to give to yoga to get the benefits of it, and as well as how much it can help you with your mindset as well as with your physical health. So really happy to put this one out for you to listen to and to learn from, and I hope that you really enjoy it. Before we dive into the interview with Cheri, I just want to give you my pun of the day. And the pun of the day is this. So what I suggest you do is tell your opponent this before you play them, okay? Ask them if their nickname is cream cheese. And if they ask you why, you tell them because you're about to get bageled. All right? All right, just be a little careful. You might have to put on some good shoes so you can sprint away very quickly as they run towards you with their racket swinging at you. But anyways, hope you enjoyed that pun. You probably didn't, and you probably turned this episode off by now. I hope not. But with that, as you know, I love puns. So with that, let's bring you to this interview with Cheri Cope about how yoga can strengthen your mind and body. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Tennis Files podcast. It's really a pleasure to have on Cheri Cope to the podcast, and I'm really excited to talk to Cheri because we really haven't had too much content in the way of yoga and how that can really positively impact your tennis game. I know that when I practice yoga, it really makes me feel just so much better and more able to just be more flexible and mobile on the court. And so I'm really excited to bring on Cheri to talk about that and how we can help you discover the benefits and, hone in on how to practice yoga to help your game. So Cheri, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast. Really great to have you on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah. Anytime, Cheri. So I just wanted to start off by asking you about your background with respect to tennis. When did you get into the game?
Yeah, you know what? I played tennis when I was in high school. That's when I started out, and then took a little break. Went, obviously schooling, etc. And then I started back playing tennis regularly and actually on state leagues, probably 25 plus years ago, and had so much fun. And our team was pretty decent. We were etc. and playing Madison and their big tournaments there. And then I did that quite a bit for several years, and then I kind of moved on to something else. I actually got very busy. I had 3 boys, so I was very busy with my family. So yeah. And then I've been recently
Cool.
not as intense playing yoga, but I still do play tennis in the summers. Particularly, I do drills, and I do play with our club a couple times a week. Just in the summers, though, pretty casual.
Cool. Awesome. And then how about yoga? I mean, actually, which came first for you? Was it yoga or tennis?
Tennis for sure. That was, again, like high school and, 20 plus years ago. And so I started to do yoga regularly, like 15 years ago, and then got more interested in the actual yoga philosophy, I guess you would say. And I really wanted to investigate further into yoga, not only for its poses, but how it can affect you um, mentally, with being able to focus, being able to control your reactivity, etc. I just found that the more I practiced yoga, that it was really changing me from the inside out in those regards.
Can you kind of expound upon that change inside out? Because I think that's pretty fascinating and sounds life changing.
It really was. It really was. So I believe that what happens is in yoga, you not only are you breathing, you're learning how to breathe properly, which most people do not breathe deeply and properly, and that can really have a huge benefit on your nervous system. Being able to again, like, be aware of yourself and how you interact personally, and then also how you interact and react internally. With yoga, I really was understanding that I could endure and withstand discomfort for a lot longer than I thought I could. And I'm very athletic, and I'm a runner. I've done triathletes, all of that. But I found that yoga really helped me to be turn inward and become more and more aware of the benefits of breathing, the benefits of just holding and just working through moments of discomfort. And I noticed it in how I interacted with people too. So it was fascinating how it changes you. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I remember the first time I did a yoga class. I mean, it's just even holding, just holding those poses. It was at times like really excruciating, but then gradually you just learn to cope. And also, it's kind of cool, like being in a class with others. Like it
Yeah.
kind of motivates you to keep going with that. So that's really fantastic. I mean, it for people who may be like kind of apprehensive about starting with yoga. What are some of the maybe misconceptions about yoga, especially with respect to tennis? And then, like, what are maybe your responses to those?
Hmm. Well, I think a lot of people think that yoga is really easy, that it's slow, that it's just about breathing and just sitting still. And on, very opposite, it's a very physical and active, and clearly can be somewhat it's not difficult, it's just difficult in different ways. it's you sweat, you get a good workout. Again, it depends on the yoga class that you're taking, but there's so much misconceptions that you're going to just come and you're just going to sit still and breathe, whereas actually you are moving your body and you're strengthening particular muscles. And it is not just stretching and flexibility, and yes, that's very, very important, but there's this balance that's created in the body, and it benefits your body in whatever you're doing off the mat. So for instance, tennis, it's an incredible cross training for that.
So, in terms of a structured routine, and or maybe let's go to like frequency. Like, how frequent should somebody be doing yoga? Let's say actually to start out with, because probably a lot of people haven't even
Hmm.
ventured out into it. So, what would you recommend?
Yeah. So for people just starting out, I would say at least twice a week. And it does not have to be for an entire hour per time. It could be for 20 minutes and even half an hour. There's plenty of classes out there that can be done in that way. But the consistency is the most important. That's where you're going to see the most amount of transformation, not only in your body, but also internally with, um, again, like that transformation, like I said, being able to um, control your reactivity, breathe through difficulties, etc.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Mhm.
And then I know we're not like doing a visual class or anything
Mhm.
at this time, but I mean, what are some of the exercises, and then you can try to describe them. What are some of the most basic ones that will give us the most bang for our buck as tennis players?
Yeah. One pose that you see often is downward facing dog. So where you're on your hands and then your feet and your seat is in the air. But that one's great because you're stretching your arms overhead. So you're getting this great range of motion and strength in the upper body. And then you're also stretching your legs and your ankles, etc. Another thing about downward facing dog is your wrists are also, it's weight bearing, so it's strengthening your wrists, which you need strengthening in those
Mm.
areas as well. So it's really a great all purpose yoga pose. Another yoga pose that's fantastic is actually there's several, any lunging pose, such as crescent lunge, where you're lunging into a front knee and then the other leg is in back. And your arms are either up or they could be stretching, doing other things. But just think of the amount of times that you are lunging on the court and you're needing to like have this great range of motion, and your quad needs to be strong and your other leg has to be flexible to be able to start and stop and lunge and reach. So those are, I think, two wonderful poses, two kinds of poses that you can do to get a good bang for your buck.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm glad you mentioned, the both the exercise, but then also that we're lunging a lot on the court, because it's just an important principle overall to be training in a tennis specific type manner. So I guess, if you have a list of exercises, maybe try to think of like which ones really correlate to the moves in tennis, and that
Mm-hmm.
would be a great way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in terms of like intimidation, I think it is kind of intimidating for people to sometimes attend a class. Like I remember the first time I went, I was also very, scared that I'd look like a knucklehead, and like I was pretty much just like looking at the person next to me and copying them. But I guess what would you say in terms of to anybody who like has a fear of that sort?
Yeah, there's nothing that beats a live yoga class with other students because of the energy and so forth. But there are so many wonderful yoga classes online. In fact, I have a whole YouTube channel and I have many yoga classes there as well. So online is a great way to start, especially if you're like, oh, I don't really want to do it with with other people. And privates are great, semi-privates. Yoga teachers around the country right now are in demand for those reasons. Less amount of students, and they get personalized attention. You can get personalized attention, particularly for beginners and sport specific. So somebody could really cater a whole class around that student's body and their deficits, the things that they need to build on, and then also just their sport, what they would like to strengthen as well for their sport. So
Awesome, Cheri. And you bring a good point about structuring your routine in terms of deficits and so forth. So yeah, can we talk a bit more about that? Like when somebody's looking to create their routine, I guess I kind of mentioned the whole like tennis specific part, but like what are some other tips that you can give us? Because there are obviously like a lot of exercises for yoga
yeah.
practitioners. So like how would you structure the routine in terms of exercises?
Yeah. So you build a yoga class, and it has this sort of inverted U shape. So you start slow. You start with some good warm up, conditioning, stretching, etc., just to get your body more fluid and ready for some of the more powerful poses that come into the middle section of your class. And those typically are your standing poses. They're a little bit more interesting and dynamic transitions. And speaking of some great, again, mobility, and then stability strengthening poses are ones that require standing on one leg. Okay. And then being able to go from one leg to the other and just learning that control. And then that then gets tapered down and it can get more specific and deeper into the stretching towards the end because your body is more, it's ready, it's warmed up. And then we maybe go into some longer holds at towards the end. You go core work is big. That's what I incorporate in my classes are a lot of core and more advanced poses as we dial it down. Advanced not meaning you're going to be sweating, but deeper, more advanced poses as we get in, later in the class.
Excellent, Cheri. And then in terms of I know that you're a tennis player as well, so which is fantastic to have you on to have that experience. So how do you partition your yoga training with like other training? Like how do you kind of sort that all out? Like if somebody's also doing on court speed training and maybe they're doing some weight bearing exercises and so forth, how would you put yoga in with all that?
Yeah. So if you are doing a lot of speed training and more strengthening conditioning, it's really important to counterbalance that with static holds and also just being able to stretch and hold and be able to be aware of your body in space. Because we often, this agility and this speed, we don't get this opportunity to then counterbalance all the shortening and the tension that you're creating with speed work and strength building. So you have to add that flexibility and stretching component in it as well. So you can have this wonderful balance in your body. Because the more you're pounding the court, the more you're working with those fast twitch muscles, the more you have to stabilize and lengthen and strengthen in those ways as well. So, and that also has a real interesting effect on your joints, whole, even the sections, like your wrists and your ankles that take such a toll in tennis. It gets more into the subtle, kind of specific areas of the body that you don't hit in these other ways of training yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so in terms of mistakes that people make when they're practicing, usually when they're beginners, I guess, but maybe even later than that, like what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see students are making in class that you need to end up correcting for them?
So people think that a fast paced practice is better for some reason. When that happens, when you're sort of, I want to say, zipping through your poses just to get to the end of your, let's say they call it sun salutation, which is a series of poses. People whip through it and they think that that's a great way to do it. Whereas on the other side, it's actually, you're missing so many of the benefits of the poses. If you were to just go a bit slower, sync it with your breath. For instance, sun salutations include a back bend, and that back bend is so beneficial to our bodies. And often I see students not even doing the back bend. So that's a mistake. And then, I guess just being hard on themselves, because they say, I'm not good at yoga. And this is more of a mental thing. I'm not good at yoga. I'm not very flexible. And that can really be, that's a deficit as well. That's an issue because you're just self-limiting, and it's not about that. We all are different. Our bodies are all in different shapes and sizes and mobility abilities. So this is all about what your body can do and working within that range for what is best for you. So those are two big things that I see that are kind of my little Achilles heel when I hear somebody say, I'm not very flexible. I'm not going to do that. I'm like, but that's the whole reason why, right?
Exactly. That's why I
That's
started.
why. That's why
Yeah.
you do it. Hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, don't be scared to start.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, actually, have you ever seen anybody get injured practicing yoga? And if so, like, what did they do to get injured?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. In fact, I've been injured my lower back, and that's because
Oh,
I
wow.
don't take the time to do the proper warm-ups, really ease the body into getting to the bigger poses. And just like anything, we all have egos and we want to go for that big pose. We want to go for that crazy arm balance, right? And we push ourselves. So that's where I've seen people get injured, and I've even for sure done it myself. So that's very humbling, and that's another great thing that you learn on the mat. You learn how to humble yourself and be right where you're at in your body and what it's
Mm,
capable of in that moment.
mm.
Yeah.
What what is the key to progressing in yoga?
Yeah. Patience for sure. To not get ahead of yourself. And again, when you are looking at somebody next to you on the mat and you're seeing that they are an advanced yogi, let's say, or they might not even be an advanced yogi, they're just more flexible in a particular way. So that patience, focusing on what is going on in your body and on your mat, and learning about yourself. That's why you're there.
Curious about your progression in yoga and like
Mhm.
what types of resources did you use, or like how did you learn and become an expert in this practice?
Yeah, so I practiced with a couple of teachers that I really enjoyed taking from, and I learned from them, and I loved how they incorporated mindfulness into the classes as well. And because of that, I wanted to integrate that more into my life, and I actually have a mental conditioning business as well. So I went and did my 200-hour teacher training because I wanted, and I knew it would be like the perfect complement to mental conditioning training, and it certainly is. And because I loved it so much and I wanted to really go deeper, I went back and I did a 500, well, an additional 300-hour teacher training. So I have a 500-hour teacher training. So
Wow.
not only did it advance both physically is what you see on it, it's more than that. It's again, it's kind of understanding yourself, having this great focus, kind of more peaceful way of dealing with the world and what in the chaos around you. Mhm.
Yeah, so you actually, I think, started to answer my next question, which, you mentioned that yoga is the perfect complement to mental training. So, what, maybe if you can expound upon it any further?
Yeah. So again, the whole idea behind yoga is to combine and unify the mind and the body so that you can sync together and become a more powerful person, physically and mentally, emotionally, etc. So, along with then mental conditioning is your ability to stay calm under pressure, to be able to stay focused in being in the present moment when you need it the most, to be able to, I guess, you know, visualize what you're going to be doing, to be able to just tune into your own body so you can understand what you need. Breathing, again, is a huge part. They call it pranayama in yoga. Breathing is a huge part, I believe, of mental training as well. So being able to
Mhm.
regulate your nervous system. You can ramp it up or you can bring it down as needed. So those are just some of the ways that we can really hone your mental skills. So really being in that present moment is huge, because when we are in, let's say, a hard tennis match and your attention is elsewhere, let's say you're thinking about the outcome, or you might be still reeling about something you did not so great in a few moments ago. Maybe your serve is off. So being able to bring yourself into the present moment on command through your breath, through focusing your mind and aiming your mind on whatever you need to do, what is in your control, is huge. And you learn that in yoga. It's the perfect practice for learning all of these skills.
Yeah, 100%. It's really great. I mean, that yoga can provide you with both, the physical advantages and the mental advantages, all in one practice. So that's really
Yeah.
a big benefit, and it makes yoga very attractive. And yeah, I mean, it's really crucial to stay in the present. I've had so many mental game experts on the
Mm-hmm.
podcast. Jeff Greenwald, he talks about like in between
Yeah.
points, like doing these physical cues to keep yourself in the moment, as well as I remember Jorge Capistani, like he crossed out past and future, and present was the way to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, a lot of great
Yeah.
stuff.
There's I just wrote about it, and I just did some mental conditioning coaching with a varsity tennis team here. And one, there's a word in yoga, it's a Sanskrit word called drishti. And it's basically your focus in where you hold your eyes on a focal point, and how that not only creates better balance, right? And better direction for where you intend to place your energy. Let's say your tennis, where you're focusing your eyes on the ball, or you're focusing your eyes on where you're going to hit the ball, etc. In the drishti is used in yoga to, when you're holding a pose, let's say a tree pose, for instance, where you're standing on a single leg and you have your other knee bent and placed, the foot's placed on that standing leg. You have to hold a drishti, hold your focus on a single point. Otherwise, you're going to be falling all over the place. If your eyes are all over the place, that's where your body's going to go. And I can only imagine that is
mm.
a really great skill to have on the tennis court. You're not focused on what's happening outside the fence. You're not, your drishti isn't on like, oh no, I don't want to shoot or, hit the shot right at the net person. Well, typically where your eyes are going, that's where your shot's going to go. So we used and integrated that drishti, that yoga word, and practice into sports performance specifically. So
Yeah, that's huge. I think one thing that comes to mind is like if I'm stretching and I all of a sudden like move my eyes to the side, then I tend to fall off balance.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, for sure. And also, I recently did a couple
Mm-hmm.
episodes on tracking the ball and such. And yeah,
Interesting.
you're just so right that that's such a important skill. People,
Mm-hmm.
when they're when the ball's coming toward them, sometimes they're looking at their opponent or some other extraneous
Yeah,
thing, and so that aspect of it all is really important too.
right, right.
So, yeah,
And it's holding your
awesome.
aim too, not only physically with your eyes, but what are your intentions? Are you, again, is your focus on the past or some kind of issue outside of the tennis court? Or again, are you focused on the game score, the end game score? Therefore, then you're not in that moment. So that drishti is, external and it's internal, and where you're holding your aim of your focus.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So, what would you advise people, I would say like myself, who are very, they're pretty inflexible, like they're very tight. Like I
Yeah.
personally have really tight hips and things like that. Because, sometimes when you go into a class, or even just watch one yourself, like some of the poses that you see, like you're not going to be able to, be as your range of motion isn't as big.
Yeah.
So, are there any adjustments or other things? I mean,
Mhm.
I know that like there's yoga blocks and things like that, but what tips do you have for those of us who are very inflexible but still want to practice?
Yeah, for sure. Yoga blocks are a great way to bring the ground up when you're not very flexible, particularly in your legs and in your hamstrings and hips. There's yoga straps, and you could
Mm.
even at home, if you don't have a yoga strap, you can just grab a belt or any kind of you know thing that mimics that for doing leg extensions, let's say. And that I really recommend. When you're lunging in a low lunge, let's say you have one leg up and you have one leg back, and your front leg is lunging forward deeply, that can be really difficult for a lot of people whose hips are tight. So having blocks under both hands up towards that front lunged leg is really nice. And you don't have to have straight legs. Okay, that's a huge one. People say when they're
Mm.
doing a seated forward fold and their legs are straight, you'll see people just wanting to straighten their legs and then lean forward, and then they're rounding their back into it. And then that doesn't even become a leg stretch; it becomes more of a back stretch. And so my suggestion is bend your knees as much as you need to,
Uh,
and then use your breath and patience to let things relax, because our bodies sometimes are resisting what is happening, particularly in stretches that are uncomfortable for you. Our minds and our bodies go, whoa, 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 wait, what are we doing here? And that there's some tension initially. So you just breathe through it, have some patience, and you're going to get way deeper just with that in itself. So
wow, yeah, that's really enlightening. Thank you for
yeah,
mentioning that. So I guess to
yeah.
talk about it further, yeah, because I usually like try to straighten. So
Hmm.
when is it appropriate that to like keep your okay, assuming you're inflexible,
Hmm.
when is it appropriate to like keep them straight and stretch versus like bend them and stretch? Like, are there different like poses or stretch exercises where you want to do one versus the other, or is it always like is always bent preferable? What are your thoughts?
It is definitely all about working within your body, because there are some people who will never get their legs straight, and that really isn't necessary for you to reap the benefits of a pose. So let's say triangle pose, that's a very advanced difficult pose for a lot of people. So you're standing with straight legs in a triangular position, and you are then bending over to the side. So you're rotating your torso, your legs are straightened, not straight end, and then you're reaching an arm upwards. So that front leg, typically people are like, I've got to have straight legs here. No, have a soft bend in your knee, straighten it to the place where you're like, yeah, I feel that. I'm going to work with it right from here. And so just getting into poses and getting to that little bit, to that point where you're just slightly uncomfortable, work with it right from that moment on. Mhm.
Got
Mhm.
it. Got it. And then so the next times, like you can try to like bend your knees a little bit less and
Yeah,
less and like,
absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
And that just prevents injury.
got it.
And like I said,
Mm-hmm.
like I am not a my legs. I'm an I mean, I'm a runner and I've done a lot of biking. So my legs are not created to be super straight. So when you or on yogis with this incredibly long legs and perfectly straight. I mean, I'm a 500-hour teacher, and I can't do that. So that doesn't make you a good yogi. A good yogi is one who is aware of their body.
Mm,
Hmm.
gotcha. Gotcha. Very cool. So in terms of transformations, just kind of to hammer home, how great yoga is
Mhm.
for tennis players and everybody. What personal benefits have you seen? And I mean, you can give timelines or results or whatever you want, but just curious to hear how it's impacted you.
Yeah, for me, I guess I know where I've gotten as far as level isn't important to me right now, but I have to say how it's helped me is, again, I'm going to come back to staying in the moment. So when I'm getting a little bit anxious or frustrated with my serve, or I'm getting beat, or I'm just down some points or down some games, I really don't let it get to me. And again, I don't have much
Mm,
on the line anymore, but I have come back so many more times than not, just by having that patience and calmness and just being, something's going to change around. I'm just going to keep playing. I'm just going to keep playing my game. So I'm not getting stiff and tight. So just breathing, using my yogic breath, which is the deep diaphragmatic belly breathing, so I can, again, kind of calm my body, calm my mind, my nervous system. um, that I can do and I've learned to do regularly. And again, I just feel like I'm stronger in my core because of yoga
hmm
in all the sports that I do. So, and that's hugely beneficial. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. How about your clients? Like what types of comments and feedback have you gotten from them after they've tried it for a while?
Yeah. So the thing that another thing is the symmetrical um, kind of aspect of playing tennis. You're lunging from one leg to the other, and you're running around the court, and you have to start and you have to stop. The asymmetrical aspect of tennis is really enhanced with some of the asymmetrical poses in yoga, and the balance that and strength
Mm,
that it creates in your body in those moments. In addition to hip opening, hip people in their hips get extremely tight. So
hmm
Warrior Two, for instance, is a great standing pose, and
mm,
your feet are turned and your torso is turned to the side in a way that you're opening your hips and lunging at the same time. So you're stretching and you're strengthening a quad all at the same time. You're strength or stretching the opposite leg. You're holding yourself in space in a way that your core is gaining strength. So if you can imagine kind of all your limbs in different directions in a yoga pose, think of the way that happens on the tennis court as well. So I believe that those really cross over very nicely to what I've seen my tennis clients, yogis that play tennis, that they've really liked about yoga.
very
Mhm.
nice, very nice. So one other thing that I get a lot questions
Mhm.
about a lot in terms of is when they should do something. So, like with respect to their tennis playing, like is it optimal that we practice yoga, in the morning or at night, or is it better to do it like right after tennis, right before tennis? What's your take on that?
My first thought is practice whenever you can get it in, just so you can get it in.
hmm
And again, that consistency, 2 3 times a week, whether again it's a shorter class or an hour class, etc. But stretching, you can definitely benefit from doing some of these stretching before a yoga match or before a tennis match. Things like down
hmm
dog, kind of just drop into a down dog, or there's a lot of different shoulder stretches. You can even take your racket and place, one hand on the end of the racket and the other on the handle, and then start to just kind of stretch your arms and your shoulders. That's going to be great for mobility during your match. And then, of course, recovery is wonderful. If you did have some time to do a few yoga stretches, maybe some seated leg extensions, forward folds, that kind of thing after, that would be ideal. But knowing that that's hard to do sometimes. So get it in where you can get it
Gotcha.
in for sure.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, just like you
Yep.
said. Yeah, that
Yeah.
consistency is above all like the most important
Hmm.
thing. So, just trying to think in terms of we talked about like 2 to 3 times a week would even be very
Hmm.
beneficial, and we could even do shorter sessions. So, what body areas would you prioritize if we the priority for us is like
Hmm.
consistency and like we only have like limited
Yep.
time, whatever, or just a small amount of time to get us started. Like, what would you prioritize in those
I would
sessions?
say shoulder mobility, some stretches there. Hips would be really great. So you do a couple of standing warrior poses just to get yourself, opened up and stretched out a little bit, and also the more that you can get your blood flowing to that area, that is key to that mobility, in your hips and even in your knees, etc. So let's see what else I would say. That I would say, if you knew the sequence, you could certainly learn it online. There's a lot of online examples. Sun salutation, just a typical sun salutation is, you could do a couple of those, and that covers your entire body. A sun salutation, just to kind of bring you through it, is just a forward fold. You step back, you do a plank. So you're warming up your core right away and your shoulders because you're holding a plank. And then you lower down onto your belly and you lift up for a little back bend. So that back bend, you're warming up your spine, and then you come back to a downward facing dog. And again, we talked about how great the down dog is. And then you step back up to your hands, and then you stand back up. That's a whole sun salutation. And you can imagine that just covers your entire body.
Fantastic. That's excellent. Appreciate that. In terms of finding a good yoga instructor, I mean, obviously you should go to chericope.com and check out all that stuff, as well as Cheri's YouTube channel. But I guess in terms of if somebody like they have nearby classes or something like that,
Mhm.
or instructor, like any tips on like finding a good class versus so that you're not stuck in like a bad one.
Yeah. So that's important to read. If you have a nearby yoga studio, go online and look at their class descriptions. And each class is different. Like, I teach more towards strength and flexibility, but there's
Mm,
another teacher who is very advanced, and it's, she teaches one class that's very advanced, and that would be, I think, hard for a beginner, even intermediate, to go into. So, and those class descriptions should be pretty defined. There's classes called yin yoga. Yin is almost all stretching. So, and that can be hard in and of itself. So, it's also going to be a little more low key. So, you have to know that you're not going to probably, you know, break a sweat in that kind of class. But it's really a wonderful class. So read those descriptions. Call and ask the owner or the person that's at the front desk if they have that. Just say, "Hey, this is who I am. I'm this level of a student. I play a lot of tennis. What class would be the best for me?" I think that's the best way to do it. And then online too, gosh, you could Google yoga for tennis, and I bet you, or yoga for athletes, you'll come up with a number of different selections. Probably too many, but yeah. And again, on my YouTube channel, I actually do have several that are conditioning yoga classes, and then also ones for athletes. Hmm.
awesome, awesome. And actually, so I guess there's like all these different types of yoga. Like, isn't there like hot
Yeah.
yoga and other variations? So I don't know. Any thoughts on that? Like, do we just keep it simple and like just I don't know. Like, what do you think and what do you
Yeah.
recommend?
Try it out. Try it out for yourself. I personally am not a fan of hot yoga. It is really great. People swear by it for getting into their body and more flexibility with the heat. I just don't like the way it feels with the heat and the humidity in there. Um, but yeah, there are lots of different, and just try it out for yourself. You might absolutely love a hot yoga, or you might love the yin style of yoga, or you might like the more athletic yoga with kind of interesting, fun transitions. That you're still they're strong classes, and you break a sweat, but they're not doing poses that are difficult for most people. Put it that way, like almost impossible for most people to do. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
Mhm,
Very cool. Very
mhm.
cool. Oh, in terms of the tour, like I'm not sure how much, how in depth you follow
Yeah.
like the tour with respect to like yoga and stuff. But I was curious, do you know if players, like more players have started to practice yoga and any idea of like percentages or anything like that?
You know what? I don't. I haven't followed that. I did watch the US Open a little bit, and I, kind of heard little, you know, rumblings about, people who practice yoga and also meditation. I think Djokovic does. I think he's
For
pretty well
sure, yeah.
known for that. Nadal might. I believe he did. And, I just think that, ev- well, of course, I would say that everybody, all especially professional tennis players, should practice for all of the reasons that we have talked about, in this podcast so far. It is, like I said, the practice to enhance all of the skills and the body components that are necessary for being strong, flexible, mobile in such a dynamic, explosive sport.
Got it.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. So, to any of those people who are still hesitating, what is the easiest way to just start practicing yoga like right now?
Yeah, just be where you're at. Don't get ahead of yourself. Take a deep breath. Go online. Search for. Honestly, if some description stands out for you, and you're like, wow, that looks interesting, start there. We're obviously going to be more receptive to anything that we do when we're interested. So, and again, they all, I believe, online will say, beginner or intermediate. So start where you're interested. What and assess in your own body. What do you need the most? Do you need more strength and conditioning? Therefore, then you can do a more athletic class. Or maybe you are really working on flexibility, mobility. Then that's where you start. So it's a self
Gotcha.
awareness deal, really.
Gotcha. Awesome. And I know we mentioned beforehand, but what are the best places to check out your content, Cheri?
Yeah. My website is my name, chericope.com. And I believe my YouTube channel is the same, Cheri Cope on YouTube. So easy. So I've condensed a couple years ago, my website, and I have all my information on that. So it's
Sweet.
easiest. Mhm.
Awesome. Are you on the Instagram or the
Oh,
TikToks? Any
yeah,
of
I am.
those?
I am. Again, I am in Instagram as well. That's a lot of fun for
Cool.
me. You'll sometimes see some things that are instructional, and then some other fun things about my life. So and again, that's just Cheri Cope on Instagram. You can easily find me there. Same name, and try to keep it simple. Yeah,
A nice short name,
yeah,
unlike me.
right, right.
Cool.
Yeah,
And in terms of books for yoga, I actually I'm not sure if you've written any, but like, what books would you recommend for people to check out
yeah,
if you think that's a good way
yeah.
to start?
You know, some of the books I'm thinking of right now are a little advanced. There's one about Iyengar, Light on Yoga, and you're going to find a little bit more information on yoga philosophy in that. I'm trying to think of the good. I
Hmm.
do have a book. I don't know the name of it, but it's actually more of it's pretty thick, almost a dictionary of yoga poses. and actually the yoga sequences such as sun salutations, like I mentioned. I wish I knew the I can get it to you if you somehow if you would like
Yeah,
to
you can
find
just
that
forward it
out.
to me. We'll have this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Perf-
we'll have links in the show notes. So
Perfect. I'll do that. So I can get you exactly the author. And so I was thinking that would be more beneficial for the listeners here today. Yeah.
excellent, excellent. So, a fun question that some people get stumped on is that I ask at the end of the show is if you could put up a huge billboard on the most trafficked street in your city, what would you write on that for people to see?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite quotes is your living small does not serve the world.
Hmm, love it.
Mhm.
That's really
Yeah,
good.
that's an
Yeah,
important
yeah.
mantra in my life. And sometimes we just need to put ourselves out there because we all have gifts that we can give. And when you, again, can practice and just go for things, how much more you get back from that. Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's so important. I mean, it applies to everything. You just got to get out of your comfort zone in order to really get
Yeah.
to the heights that you want to get to.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you have aspirations like that.
Yeah.
But very cool. Cheri, is there anything else that you want to tell the listeners that maybe we didn't touch upon today?
Yeah, I just think I believe just the important thing to know about yoga is it isn't just the yoga poses that you see and physically do. It's much more. It's again that uniting the mind and the body so that we can really be, I guess, more attuned to ourselves. We can be live a life of grace because we so often just cause our own suffering. And yoga is all about kind of learning those dysfunctional patterns and thought patterns and learning how to shed that and let go of those kinds of things and basically reprogramming so you can again you could just be a lighter more integrated and happier person. So that's really what yoga is about, and that's why the yoga poses were invented and discovered, is in order to basically wear you down so much so that you can get to the other side and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, whatever, I'm ready to listen, I'm ready to be present, I'm ready to listen and give it up. So that's essentially what yoga is. Mhm.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cheri. So, the question I close with on every interview is what is one key tip that you can give our audience to help them improve their tennis games?
Yeah. Have a good, it's called the right balance. So try to avoid only doing one thing, one or two things in your body. Have a well-rounded practice. So when you're doing strengthening, make sure you're doing the flexibility, mobility practices in whatever you do, even, not in yoga, etc. So it's that best balance action in your body is what is going to make you a more powerful.
On episode 217 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn how yoga can strengthen your mind and body with Cheri Cope. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This is Mirabon, and I'm happy to have you listening to this one. And today's episode is on yoga and how it can help you both mentally and physically. And I definitely knew about the latter as I have inconsistently practiced yoga. And when I have, I felt much better off the court and as well as immediately after the yoga session. But after talking to Cheri, I realized that yoga can also have a lot of great mental benefits as well. And so we dive deep into yoga here and we talk about how Cheri discovered yoga, its supreme benefits when you practice it consistently, exercises, the best ones that Cheri suggests for tennis players, how much or really how little of a time commitment you need to give to yoga to get the benefits of it, and as well as how much it can help you with your mindset as well as with your physical health. So, really happy to put this one out for you to listen to and to learn from, and I hope that you really enjoy it. Before we dive into the interview with Cheri, I just want to give you my pun of the day. And the pun of the day is this. So what I suggest you do is tell your opponent this before you play them, okay? Ask them if their nickname is cream cheese. And if they ask you why, you tell them because you're about to get bageled. All right? All right, just be a little careful. You might have to put on some good shoes so you can sprint away very quickly as they run towards you with their racket swinging at you. But anyways, hope you enjoyed that pun. You probably didn't, and you probably turned this episode off by now. I hope not. But with that, as you know, I love puns. So with that, let's bring you to this interview with Cheri Cope about how yoga can strengthen your mind and body. Enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Tennis Files podcast. It's really a pleasure to have on Cheri Cope to the podcast. And I'm really excited to talk to Cheri because we really haven't had too much content in the way of yoga and how that can really positively impact your tennis game. I know that when I practice yoga, it really makes me feel just so much better and more able to just be more flexible and mobile on the court. And so I'm really excited to bring on Cheri to talk about that and how we can help you discover the benefits and, hone in on how to practice yoga to help your game. So Cheri, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast. Really great to have you on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah, anytime, Cheri. So I just wanted to start off by asking you about your background with respect to tennis. When did you get into the game?
Yeah, you know what? I played tennis when I was in high school. That's when I started out.